بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, please recite a salawat. A few days have passed from this blessed month of Ramadan, and we will continue to see these days going by. I hope and I pray at this moment for all of us to be able to make use of this month, inshallah, seriously, in a serious manner, to be able to progress and move in the direction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has wanted us to move in with the blessings of this special month, especially the recitation of the Quran. I hope this center, this MOMIN center, which was witness to the recitations of the Quran prior to this, just earlier on, we see the presence of believers more, the presence of listening to the Quran. It brings light to the heart. Looking at the Quran brings light to the heart. Reading of the Quran, even if we don't understand it, brings light to the heart. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in this blessed month, the month of the Quran, to be able to recite more, listen more, reflect upon the verses more, insha'Allah. We were talking about some of the things that our inner selves, our nafs, our ruh, our souls are supposed to be doing, which give us direction, which are more important than the outward expressions of our a'mal, more important than what appears from us in our conduct, in our day-to-day conduct, what we do, the prayers we perform, the hajj we go to, the fast we perform. The inner part of that, as we will see inshallah today, we have yet another riwayah, hadith, that will clarify this even more. The more important part of us and what that does. We were talking about that, and inshallah with this we want to try to move towards the goal of our creation, which, if we have identified that, if we've understood it, we're moving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're trying to acquire His proximity, which is the most enjoyable thing. And none of what we enjoy in this world is even comparable to the joy of meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and enjoying His proximity. In order to do so this year, we are talking about what that inner self is going to be doing. We mentioned that one thing that the heart, the aql, the inner self, whichever you prefer to call it, needs to do is observe the haqq, the truth in this world, observing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the real source of everything, the haqq, the truth. These words mean a lot. Sometimes we see these words mentioned in the Holy Quran. إن الله ذلك بأن الله هو الحق. Okay, and we read the word in English, truth. And we don't really understand the extent of what this actually means. And I hope we spend time thinking about this. Understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding Him as the sole source of everything, this is something that we have to allow our hearts to see. Seeing everything around us as the signs, the manifestations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the first thing. Based on that, what we arrived at was that after observing that, then the heart, the soul, is going to be turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and only Him, and turning away from everything else. This was called mukhlisina lahuddin. This is what we find in the verses of the Holy Quran. The believers are supposed to be mukhlisina lahuddin. Okay, mukhlisina lahuddin, turning away from everything and only to Allah. Now this is not very clear. What exactly do we mean by this? Turning away from everything and only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does this exactly mean? Sometimes maybe the understanding we get from this is a little frightening. And people may develop certain phobia towards you if you discuss things in this manner, especially in this day and age. What do we mean exactly by turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leaving everything else? We want to explain it in some of the actions that we have and try to understand that. We'll start with the worships. One thing that we definitely have to turn to Allah, and when we discuss the concept of ikhlas, we automatically, or the first thing that comes to our mind is ibadah, worship, prayer, and so on and so forth. This is one example of what we are talking about. In ibadah, we have got to turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not only do we turn towards Him, we turn away from everything else. These are two components of ikhlas. Okay. Turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turning our attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't sufficient. Okay. It is turning the attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and away from everything else. Not a combination. Okay. If it's a combination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and everything else. Last year we talked about an example, I don't know if you remember or not, of some examples of prayer that just don't include God in them at all. Like the person who was praying to remember what he would usually forget. We mentioned, I don't know if you remember or not, the person who in the middle of the lecture would get up and pray, and over, and every time he would finish his prayer he would start writing something down. And the scholar asked him, so why do you do that? He said, there's many things I can't remember. The only time that they come to me and I remember them is in prayer. Okay, so the whole purpose of that prayer, this is funny, it's a joke, but unfortunately maybe people like myself, the only thing we don't think of in prayer is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, just realize, oh, I finished the prayer. What was this? Was this Maghrib, Isha, Dhuhr, Asr? What did I say? I don't remember. It's just like autopilot. Okay, you say Allahu Akbar and just... We're supposed to be paying some attention at least to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ideally, we're supposed to be attending only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, وَأَقِيمُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. The verse of the Holy Quran says, when you're worshipping, in that worship, you should be cut off and detached from everything else and only attending to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your attention, your full attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've heard the story of Amirul Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi. That in a battle he had a spear in his foot, okay, somewhere in his lower leg, in his foot maybe, or below the knee somewhere. And I don't know if we really understand what pain that is going to mean, right? We have a small cut and we're all over the place. I know people who faint, okay, when they have a small cut, a little bit of blood, right? You have a spear still in your leg, and they ask the Holy Prophet, so what should we do? He says, go to Ali during prayer and try to take it out then. Because he's completely out of everything except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? There's no attention to anything else. And this is not easy. Okay? This is not easy to try to reach a state of this, the control of this inner self, that ruh, that nafs, that it can focus on only the divine, only Allah, and not focus on anything not around them, but within this body. Okay? Especially such excruciating pain that would be having. It's not an easy thing. Recently, we were in the presence, inshallah, Allah give you all the tawfiq. A couple days before I came to Dallas, I was in Mashhad al-Rida, salamullah alayh. Well, it was a beautiful experience there, and inshallah I hope and pray that we all have the tawfiq, the ability to have that experience in the near future again. But we had the tawfiq to be in the presence of one of the great ulama, a student of Allama Tabatabai. There was a camp, a Swedish camp, I was visiting Iran, and I had the blessing of being with these brothers and sisters, youth that had come. And I hope, I don't know if in this community this is happening or not, but it's a very, very beneficial thing to try to do. Get the youth together, organize a trip, and I can tell you this, based on this last experience, those who would like to organize this, all you got to do, it's not too expensive. If you could just pay for the ticket, going there, they'll take care of the rest of it. Okay, this is something that you can think of doing on a serious, very serious note. So anyway, we invited some of the brothers invited this scholar, the student of Allama Tabatabai, and he gave a very nice talk. Then one of the students, one of the brothers, hearing that this is the student of Allama Tabatabai, asked him, can you give us some memory that you would have, a good experience that you had, something that you remember from Allama Tabatabai. He said Allama Tabatabai's life from beginning to end is all memories. Okay, and what he told us there was this. He said his eye had developed a problem, he required a surgery. Okay, he needed to have a surgery done on his eye. He went to the surgery room, and the doctors wanted to obviously put him to sleep, okay, for a couple of hours so they can do the surgery. He said, I'm not going to be put to sleep. That's not something that I'm going to do. I don't know, with these people who have witnessed the divine, they've witnessed beyond these regular signs, there's weird things about them, okay? They don't want to ever be in the state of ghafla, okay, in the state of negligence, in the state where they are not attending to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright, their attention is not on Him. They would avoid anything and everything to try to keep that state of remembrance and dhikr. He said, no, I'm not. He said, that's surgery. And we need your eye open for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, how long, in order to do this surgery. He said, that's okay. I'll keep my eye open. I won't blink. Okay. And he did that. Okay. He didn't blink. He allowed them to do the surgery. He's not put to sleep. Right? If someone is able to have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that nafs has strengthened, This is the power of the nafs. We want to develop strength and power. We think of going and either physically trying to work out and strengthen ourselves, or through wealth gathering, making money, and so on and so forth. But this is all really nothing. It's child play compared to what one can develop through strengthening their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and strengthening the nafs. When Amirul Mu'mineen picked up the door of Khaybar, that wasn't the strength of this muscle. Okay, it's not. It's the strength that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. It's the soul that's able to lift this gate. So in prayer, what's supposed to happen is a person is supposed to, ideally, what you're looking at is to be able to have this ruh, this nafs, have its attention focused on only and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's doable. It's doable for all of us. One of the ulama that I choose not to mention his name for different reasons, one of the great ulama that we have who is still alive, one of his students says that when we were in exile in one of the cities in Iran during the regime of the Shah before the revolution, we had a congregational prayer in the room. Now this city was one in the rural areas, and therefore you had animals, goats and sheep and so on and so forth wandering about. And he said we were praying in this room, and a goat just came in and started making noise, and I don't know, the way I guess it happened was very funny. He said many of us were on the verge of bursting in laughter and breaking our prayers. And these are Hausa students, okay? These are some of them speakers, ulama to an extent. And we had to hold ourselves so we don't burst into laughter. And after the prayer, we were all talking about it, and that alim, that teacher of ours who was leading the prayer, when we spoke to him about it, he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, didn't you hear it? The goat was making noise." He said, what are you talking about?" I didn't. He didn't hear it. He's not faking it, right? Somebody's that connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we can become that connected, then this will happen. Now, I'm mentioning this as an ideal for a reason. I myself have to go to that first step. If I can barely push myself to include God in my attention and part of my focus, I think I've taken a great step towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know if I mentioned this story or not, but one of the great speakers, one of the wa'adh, those who when they spoke, they made the generals of the Shah, not this last dynasty of Shahs in Iran, the previous one, the Qajar, they made the generals of the Shah shiver, okay, and cry. Right? You had people that were that powerful. They didn't give long talks. Sometimes it would go up, just give a 5-minute talk, but they'd have the whole crowd just bursting in tears and crying. And he went up, they say he went up, and he said, "People, all the prophets that came, they came to tell you not to be mushrik." Okay. From Prophet Nuh and Ibrahim and Moses and Jesus and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the teaching of all these prophets was Allah tushriku billah. Do not have shirk in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I have come to you to tell you, be mushrik. Okay. Please, I beg you, be mushrik. Because we don't have God as part of anything. Okay. Let's include Him. Right? The prophets were telling us, exclude everyone else, I'm telling you, basically, I'm translating what he had to say. I'm telling you, please include God in your daily lives. Okay. So for me, and people like me, in prayer, when we're talking about ikhlas, I have to try to include God as part of what I am trying to focus on, and not just remember everything else that I've been doing during the day. Recite salawat, please. This is what I have to do, but it's good to know what's ideal. Right? It's good to know what direction we're moving towards. It's good to hear that every once in a while. One of the reasons why it's good is to understand how our good deeds are not good. Sometimes we start feeling proud about ourselves. We feel that we're doing a good job. We need a pat on the back. Okay? Sometimes we really feel that. And learning about the ideals, hearing about what we should be, one of the benefits of it is to realize that we're very far away from what we need to be. Okay? I don't know how we can have ujb. I don't know how we can feel proud of ourselves in our worships. If we understand when we don't see these things, when we don't hear them, when we don't read about them, in our community, I have a beard, I pray, I recite dua, and people give me good comments, and I think, oh, I'm doing pretty good here. But it's very unfortunate. There's a long ways to go. A very long ways to go. There's something scary with regards to the prayer that I just said. Allama Tabatabai says in a book of his, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being merciful for accepting these prayers of ours. Because even when we think we are speaking to God and we are remembering Him, what our understanding of God is not God. That's not Him. We're worshipping our own illusions, our own imagination. It's not God. God's being merciful to accept this from us. So ikhlas, mukhlasina lahuddin, in the context of worships like prayer, is this: turning away from everything else and focusing our attention only and only and only on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recite a salawat, please. Then we have some other worships. We have some other worships that are a little different. What are some of these worships? For example, we have the concept of charity. Okay, we give for the iftar of the center. We give sadaqat. Someone comes and asks us for money. They're in need. We give them a little bit of cash, or maybe a little more than just a little bit. Charity. Providing services for others. You know, it's very rewarding. Very rewarding to try to provide assistance and help for others. It's one of the things that will help provide enormous help to try to help us get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is providing assistance for believers. If somebody asks us to do something, we should be waiting for that minute, okay, to try to provide them with assistance. These are worships. These are activities that we usually understand them in the context of some form of charity, something that has to do with worshiping God. Okay. When it comes to these actions, the concept of ikhlas develops something a little different, because the focus of these worships isn't to focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of prayer is aqim as-salata li-dhikri. Okay. The purpose of it is to remind us of those observations, seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the source of everything. But these other worships, the purpose of them isn't that. It will help, but that's not the direct focus of it. It's not dhikr in itself. So in that action, in the process of that work that we're doing, what does ikhlas translate to? Ikhlas translates to performing the action only and only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for no other reason. No other reason. No internal reason, and no external reason for people to see or anything like that. Okay. All of that has got to leave our thoughts, and our intention should not be any of that. Only and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's unfortunate sometimes the way I see people explaining even some of the worships of the first type, fasting, prayer, and so on and so forth. The explanations that are given are such that one develops a reason to do them that are other than doing them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, they explain certain physical benefits in doing some of these acts. Certain physical benefits of fasting. You can't fast to lose weight. Okay. You shouldn't be fasting for that reason. That's something that may happen. It may be healthy for you to fast. Okay. But one should not be fasting for that reason. One shouldn't even be looking forward to the month of Ramadan and thinking, oh, alhamdulillah, the month of Ramadan is coming now. I can expect to lose a few pounds by the end of the month of Ramadan. It shouldn't even be something that I'm looking forward to. In the other activities, things, as I said, such as charity and so on, these are acts that we should have nothing, no inner reason and motivation other than wanting to do this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a very beautiful hadith from Imam As-Sadiq salamullah alayhi. With regards to a verse of the Holy Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Okay. This verse says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you, created this life, and He's created death, in order to test you which of you are better in action. أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. One of the wrong understandings of this is something that the Imam denies, and he says this is not what is intended by it. He says, قال ليس يعني أكثركم عملا. It doesn't mean who does more. Okay. Sometimes we think it's all about doing more. I think we've given this example, but it won't hurt to give the example again. It's a good reminder. Sometimes we do too much dua. Sometimes we do too much dua. Together especially. It's not bad to be engaged in a lot of dua. Okay, but the mistake we make is that we want to do it in public gatherings. Okay, when we get together and everybody is there, some who are not as strong in faith, some who are stronger in faith, now we want to do a lot of dua. Let's do this dua as well. Do the other one as well. Do the other one as well. And you sit there for 2-3 hours doing dua together. This is not something that we've been asked to do. Okay. If you want to do a lot of dua, great, do it yourself, individually, in the privacy of your home, in your room, when nobody is watching you. Do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's many people that can't take it. You finish one dua, people are ready to go. Don't make the dua that they're supposed to be enjoying that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be in a way where people are just waiting for it to come to an end. And at the end you hear a very loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Finally it's done. Okay. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Okay. If you want to do a lot of dua, great. Do it. And this is very strange. And one of the ways to test this ikhlas. Then when we're in the privacy of our rooms, in the middle of the night, or during the day, nobody's around, we don't feel like doing ibadah. We feel like doing everything but ibadah. Everything comes to mind except for worship. Let me see what there is on TV. I'm just flipping through the channels, sitting there 2 hours, not finding anything on TV. I'm still flipping through the channels to try to find something to waste my time on. And then when I'm here, I just want to pray. That should be the other way around. In public, should act like you don't really worship. People should not know about your worships. Okay. People shouldn't be watching your worships. You should try to hide and do them. But when we're alone, everything is there. We want to do everything. We don't feel like doing ibadah. In public, we feel like doing ibadah. That's a bad sign. That's a negative sign. That's a really bad sign. Okay. The Imam says here, it's not أَكْثَرُكُمْ عَمَلًا. It doesn't say that who is doing more a'mal. But it means who is best. وَلَكِنْ أَصْوَبُكُمْ عَمَلًا. Who is the best in their action. What is the criterion by which we can judge what action is better than the other? وَإِنَّمَا الْإِصَابَةِ خَشْيَةُ اللَّهِ وَالنِّيَّةُ الصَّادِقَةِ. Okay. Having that humility towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and having pure intentions. This is only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. So this understood, a very interesting follow-up by the Imam. A very interesting one. ثم قال, hadith says, الإبقاء على العمل حتى يخلص أشد من العمل. This is one of those jewels that sometimes you're looking for solutions, you don't find them, and you keep looking, and somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts one of these noble words of the Ahlul Bayt before you and you see it. This is the key to a question that many people ask. Okay, I want to have ikhlas. I want to have that purity of intention. I want to remove everything else from my thought. I don't want to do it for the sake of anything and anyone else. And by the way, before I explain this, let me say that it's really difficult to remove all of that. Sometimes we feel that it's only God in our mind. Our intention, our motivation is only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it really isn't. Okay. It really isn't. It's very difficult to remove everything else. It's not easy at all. I think we mentioned this hadith, again, as a reminder. It's not a bad idea to remind all of us again of this hadith. It says, the traces of riya in the actions of the believers of this ummah is going to be like the footprints of an ant on a black stone on a pitch black night. Okay. In the middle of the day with the sun blazing, okay, if you see an ant walking on a white stone, I don't think you can spot the traces of the ant. Okay. Or on sand even. Forget about a stone. On sand, you can't. Maybe if you have a microscope, you look. Is this being intentionally done again? When it gets close to the time, you can pass me a note, believe me, I'll come down. You don't have to. Okay, let's see. So it's very difficult to try to avoid this. One of the wrong strategies that people start to develop is a strategy of not doing the action. This is what some people do. They feel like, oh, I'm doing this for somebody else. They feel disgusted about what they're doing, and they're like, what's the use of this? I'll just stop it. I'll just quit. Okay. This is a strategy. I mean, it's good to struggle to try to avoid having that form of shirk, but this is not a good strategy. You know what the Imam says? The Imam says, al-ibqa' ala al-amal, to continue the action, all right, until حَتَّى يَخْلُص, until it is purified. This is more difficult than doing the action. In other words, we have difficulty forcing ourselves to do things. Okay. Then when we start doing it, what's more difficult is to continue doing this until you've purified the intentions. Okay, this teaches us a couple of things. One is to continue. Don't stop. One of the scholars said something very beautiful once. Maybe he benefited from this hadith. He said, look, if you stop because people are watching you, that's riyā as well, because people are important to you. Okay? It should be irrelevant. People there, they're not there. I mean, as I said, we have to. The ulama tell us that it's important that we intentionally try to find times where nobody sees us and we do service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recite a salawat, please. The verse of the Holy Quran is this: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن تبدوا الصدقات فنعما هي. If you give charity in public, in front of others, there's a fundraiser, which personally, I'm not against anybody, but I don't like these forms of fundraisers where they say, okay, who's going to pay this amount of money? And somebody raises their hand. I'm not too much in favor of that. But anyway, sometimes they have them and you're participating. Sometimes showing that hand up is good because they keep announcing. People who have it, they're like afraid. They're like, nah, I shouldn't raise my hand. Okay, I shouldn't be giving. Then the first person who starts raising their hand, people start feeling like, okay, they can now start raising their hand as well. So there's benefit. When you do it publicly, more funds are going to gather. It says it's good. If you give charity publicly, you have now fundraisers not necessarily just for the centers, but also for feeding the poor. The announcements that the brother keeps making about no, not the Quran recitation as well, but also the box over there for the food drive. Okay, which I hope everybody tries to participate in that. Openly and publicly doing that has the benefit of gathering more supplies. Okay, that means that more people are going to be benefiting from that. So the verse says, فَنِعَمَّا, it's good. Right? But وَإِن تُخْفُوهَا وَتُؤْتُوهَا الْفُقَرَاءَ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. But if you do it in hiding, do it in a way where nobody sees you. Okay? Come in a little earlier where nobody sees you and put it there. Okay? Try to do it in a way where people don't see it. That's better for you. The ulama explained the reason why it's better for you is because it helps with ikhlas. Right? We should try to find times where we do things in private, nobody sees us, but when people are around, that shouldn't cause us to avoid everything. Some people don't pray their nawafil when people are around because they're like, oh, maybe this is going to be. The Imam says, continue with your action. Continue it, but don't just continue it and be negligent or start forgetting about the concept of ikhlas. No, constantly try to think about that and realize that we are deficient in that and try to move towards that ikhlas. So al-ibqa' ala al-amal hatta yakhlos ashad min al-amal. And then he gives us a sign. How do you know an amal is khalis? Okay. How do you know your action is purely and purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's difficult to find this. He says, وَالْعَمَلُ الْخَالِص الَّذِي لَا تُرِيد أَن يَحْمَدَكَ عَلَيْهِ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. The sign of ikhlas is this: if you in your heart don't like it at all for anyone to praise you for what you did except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's difficult. We may not intend to do it for someone to see us, but let's be honest. if somebody comes and praises us afterwards, we start feeling good about that. We like that. Okay. We like that praise. That's a sign. If you can develop yourself, we got to move in that direction, where the action that we do, people say it, people may praise it, but we don't like it at all. We don't have to hate it and start making an angry face, when people praise us, although we do have hadith. This is, Ayatollah Khoshfakh used to mention this hadith many times because he was very right about this. Our nafs, in his words, fattens up easily, okay? And you need to constantly be careful of this nafs. So he would mention this hadith that the Holy Prophet said, if anybody praises you in your face, you have the right to pick up some dirt and throw it in their face. Okay? It's not good to praise people in their faces. Okay? It's not good. It's not beneficial to do that. If we can develop ourselves so that when we do the action, we don't even, when they tell us about it, when they praise us on something, they say, oh, this, that, the other, what a religious brother, you're so good, you're so this, you're so that. It doesn't affect us at all. At all. Zero. They say when Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayh was praised, he used to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he used to pray that, oh Allah, make me better than what they say and don't allow me to be affected by what they say. Okay. This is something that we have to keep in mind. Ikhlas in worships is something that we find mentioned many times. The last part of that hadith that I'll end with is the Imam says, وَالنِّيَّةُ أَفْضَلْ مِنَ الْعَمَلِ. The intention in the action is more important and better than the action itself. You may give $20, but with pure intention. That's worth a lot more than $20,000 without that pure intention. Okay. If the intention is pure, that's what counts. You may not even be able to do anything, okay? Like those believers that I mentioned the other day, they used to cry because they couldn't make it to the battlefield and put their lives on the line. They didn't have the means to do that. But their intention was purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do that. We have hadith that, at least for some believers, the action that they want to do but they're not capable of doing, and they have pure intentions, it will be written in their a'mal that they have actually done it. Okay. If you try to do something, you put all your effort in it with pure intentions, it doesn't happen. Don't worry about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will write it down that you have done that action. But if we do it, but the intention is not pure, it's not only not going to count, it's going to be something which is referred to as shirk. النية أفضل من العمل ألا وإن النية هي العمل. Actually, the intention is the action. All right? This is what we're trying to do here. All right? We came back to the main point that we've been discussing these nights. The most important thing is that inner self, the inner part of us, what that does. If that is pure, if that's doing what it's supposed to, if our nafs is doing what it's supposed to, you'll see the results naturally manifesting from us and from this body, from our words, our thoughts, our interaction, our behavior with others. It's naturally going to manifest if we fix that inner side of us. If that niyyah is right, that is the amal. That is the amal, that is the action. What you're doing with your body is just the manifestation of it in the material world. But actually the action is that nafs doing it and intending it. But ikhlas, Mukhlisina lahuddin is not only this. Mukhlisina lahuddin is far beyond this. And inshallah we'll try to explain further in the following sessions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala these moments leading to Salatul Maghrib, moments of rahmah and blessing. In this blessed month of Ramadan, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us, purify us, allow us to be some of those that are the mukhlisin. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the return of our Imam. We ask Him to help us, develop us, become the true companions and sincere companions and followers of the Imam of our time. We ask Him to prolong the life of and give good health to all of those who are helping the cause of Islam, especially the Maraja and especially the leader. We ask Him to forgive us all of our sins, forgive our parents, our grandparents, our relatives, all believers, those who are alive, those who have passed away, of their sins. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide all the believers here presently. They're ill, they're needy, those of us who have relatives who are in need or who are ill, all the believers throughout the globe, whatever need that they have, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the right of Babul Hawaj Abul Fadl al-Abbas to grant their needs and requests. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve all the people of the world of the oppressions that they're facing. In Nabiya wa alih, rahimallah man qara'a al-Fatihata ma'a as-salawat.